Good. I'd like to open this special meeting of the Board of County Commissioners, October 12th, 2022. It's 9:30 a.m. Welcome, everybody. We'll start with the pledge. And Sue, would you lead us in the pledge?
Please join me in the pledge. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Keith Caddy, District 1.
I'm here.
Sue Hanson, District 2.
Here.
Roger Rash, District 3.
Here.
Appears we have a quorum. Next public comment period. Does anybody in the public like to address us at this time? I don't see anybody that's not staff, so we'll keep on moving. Mr. Washbusch, do we have anything for removal or change?
Mr. Chairman, there are no changes to the agenda.
Thank you. It appears we have one consent agenda item. All matters under the consent agenda are considered routine by the Board of County Commissioners and will be enacted with a single vote. There will be no separate discussions of these items. If discussion is deemed necessary, that item should be removed from the consent agenda and considered separately. Do you have a motion?
Move to approve your signature on the municipal new purchase order with Unified Fleet Services.
All second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, no. Passed unanimously. Next is general business. We have County Manager, Mr. Washbusch. What do you have for us?
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, it is time for presentation of the 2023 recommended budget.
Woo-hoo.
So
Great, I like
got
it.
a coffee, a backup
Thank you.
coffee.
Back up?
Yeah, there's an auxiliary coffee in case I need that. So I want to start by saying thank you to the staff and to the organization as a whole. They put forward some very thorough and thoughtful budget requests this year. It makes the whole process quite a bit easier for all of us involved in doing the preparation. And then a special thank you, as always, to the Finance Department, with a personal shout out to Lanny Paulson, who is extremely good at what he does, updating the fund models, entering these inputs, and debating pretty much every issue with us as we go through, and ultimately putting it in a format that we can analyze and make good decisions on. So he makes life easy for me, and I appreciate him greatly. So thank you, Lanny. That said, I think I want to start with a bit of our methodology. We plan at Montrose County. We run a 5-year model on every single one of our funds. And we do this to assure that the decisions we are making now work not only for the current and subsequent budget year, but also throughout that 5-year planning horizon. We are very fortunate to have the resources and the talent to be able to do this, but it keeps us in great shape. And I am pleased to report that all of our fund models maintain a minimum targeted reserve through the 5-year planning horizon. We are very diligent in making sure that those are conservative targets for minimum reserve. We keep a lot more on hand than we are required to, and are better prepared for rainy day situations as a result. The only fund that has potential shortfall in that 5-year horizon is the PSST fund, and that's really a product of adding some capital improvements into that fund. This is by no means a financial emergency. Rather, I think it's a great demonstration of why our fund modeling keeps us in good condition. When we add some capital projects like the jail, like the West End Annex into the PSST over the next few years, in 2024 and 25, we would model that that fund begins to look a little short on targeted reserve, but that's only if we went forward with capital projects as planned in those out years. Fund looks great for 2023. And really, I just wanted to bring this up because it's a perfect example of why we do the fund modeling. It allows us to be thinking 2 and 3 years ahead of time about what we need to do by fund to really meet the obligations of the organization and to stay out of trouble. So it's a big part of what we do. I think sometimes the staff and electeds might get tired of Cindy, Lanny, and myself talking about the fund models, but we are believers in what it does for us and what it does for the organization, protecting our resources and finance. So that's the coverage of our general methodology. I'm going to start the overall presentation here by covering some of the macroeconomic or macro drivers that influence the budget. These are really the recurring themes that impact the bottom line across the budget on the expenditure and the revenue side. So these three items that really drive the 2023 budget are capital projects, the labor market, and inflation. And so it's really, by order of magnitude, the capital projects are the most significant impact by far. Labor and inflation also significant influences, but compared to capital, not as big of a driver. And we'll get into great detail on this. So in 2023, just like this year, we once again have a very aggressive capital plan. These projects they're expensive, they're long-term, and they definitely impact the bottom line on both the revenue and expenditure sides of the budget. The main projects for 2023 on the capital plan are renovation of the historic courthouse. We plan to award this bid in the first quarter of 2023 and begin construction immediately thereafter, with the project continuing into 2024. We are budgeting expenses of $14.7 million in 2023 for the courthouse. And this project, I will note, is supported by a tremendous amount of federal revenue, most notably a $7.725 million congressionally directed spending request that is being routed to the county through the USDA. This renovation has been in the works for many years, as everybody's aware. With the design actually being completed in February of 2020. And at this point, as we move into 2023, we've completed our plans, taken care of the logistics of moving offices and staff around, and have the cash on hand and are ready to proceed. So courthouse, one of our big drivers on the capital side for 23. Other major capital project for 23 is the ongoing completion of the airport terminal expansion. We anticipate another $13.7 million in expenditures related to this project, which is already financed, as the board knows. Other items in the airport fund, including the purchase of passenger loading bridges and construction of additional parking, bring us to a total of approximately $20 million in capital for this fund in 2023. And while this project shows on the bottom line for the county budget, it is totally contained within the airport operations fund, and that includes carrying the debt service, which was issued in 2022. So we always like the taxpayers to understand that the airport fund is self-sustaining and is able to carry its own debt and pay for its own capital projects with significant help from federal grants that we receive through the FAA. And then the final capital project, while not as large as airport and courthouse, we are planning the jail booking and kitchen renovation, which is approximately $3.34 million in the public safety sales tax fund. We do have these funds on hand, and the design is currently moving along well for us to be able to start the project in 2023, with construction completing in 2024. So the courthouse, airport, and jail combine for over $38 million of the $50.4 million capital plan for 2023. There's another $8.7 million in capital for road and bridge, being the other major contributor there. Road and bridge being a big fund, which runs a big program on an annual basis, so that's not an unusual occurrence to have that level of expenditure on the capital side for road and bridge. These expenses and associated revenues are prominent throughout the budget, and I'm just making this clear now, so hopefully you'll forgive my redundancy as we move through the presentation and talk about these somewhat repeatedly. So the next key input is labor. The labor market has been constant national news over the past couple of years, despite the reported challenges that we hear from the national level. Montrose County has continued to have far better than average retention rates for our staff, and we've been able to successfully recruit vacancies as necessary. Our longstanding commitment to reviewing and updating our structures, as well as budgeting for market increases, has been a key reason that we have weathered these challenges so well. We do know that our employees are feeling the impacts of inflation, and we're grateful or to the board for allowing us to build in a 5% market increase and adopting a new salary structure. Like every organization, we do run on people, and we have great teams across the county. And the increase allows us to really retain the talent that makes the organization work. Even with budgeting that 5% market increase, total personnel increases, including benefits, are up 4.4% year over year. And this is possible due to the overall reduction in the FTE count across the organization, full-time employees for members of the public, and the very low increase in health insurance and 22 actuals versus original budget being a little different. So 4.4% total personnel and labor increase. And so the final overarching factor is inflation, which much like labor is national news on a pretty much daily basis. This impacts us as it would anybody else in terms of the cost of goods and services. Through the third quarter, nationally, CPI is up 8.3% over prior year. Our proposed non-personnel operating is a 9.4% increase for 2023, with the majority of that shift being attributable to an increase in private contracting at Road and Bridge, and carrying the debt service for the airport and needing to begin making those payments. Road and Bridge, again, is a large enough fund where a $1.8 million increase to contracting there is going to push the bottom line. And so if you were to back out the debt service and that increase for the private contracting, we're back down to a much lower level. And generally speaking, the departmental operating increases were much lower than the overall increase. Okay, so having got through the big influences, I can start moving quite a bit faster through the presentation. This slide, I just mentioned the sort of comparative revenues, and comparative is, when we take out those one-time, one-off, or atypical expenses and revenues, and really compare what the budget would be absent those inputs. And you can see when we back out our federal and grant revenues up top of the slide on the revenue portion, we end up with a 1% year-over-year increase in revenue. Similarly, when we back out these capital expenses on the expenditure side, we are at a 5% increase year-over-year. So this is a good way to just get a sense of the outsized impact of the capital plan really on the overall budget. Were we not taking on these aggressive capital projects, we're looking a lot more like this than the $100+ million budgets that we've been running the past couple years. This is really the summation of all funds across the organization. It's the 50,000 foot view, I'd say. The multi-year trend here shows us accruing and preparing for projects. And so really I've been describing it as this is essentially the wind up, and here's the delivery. We've been prepping, accruing, bringing in federal revenue, not going huge on expenditures, and so you see our fund balance increasing, and as we've hit 22 and are executing on the airport and now on some of our other projects for 23, we will be spending down the fund balance. And we anticipate spending down $20.7 million in fund balance across all funds for 2023. That's a big number, but it does still leave us in a very strong position. And to give historical context, we are showing a budgeted ending fund balance for 2023 of just shy of $62 million. Our ending fund balance for 2020 was right at $60 million. And so we're actually going to finish higher than we were 2 years ago, even after taking on the capital projects. So I just want the public and everyone to be clear that we've been prepping. There's the windup, there's the delivery.
And it's out of the park.
Hopefully so, yeah, like 450 feet dead center field, yeah. This is, again, very macro level, the budget overview, all funds, similar to the last slide. Here we have the total budgeted uses, and the uses include interfund transfers, so we get a higher number than when we're talking straight revenue and expenditures. Total uses, $129 million for 2023. Total sources, $108.3. The difference there being that $20.7 million reduction in fund balance. We are going to utilize, there's more money going out than coming in for 23, but again, that is a planned occurrence. I'll cover this in more detail later, but the majority of the net use comes from the airport fund with a decrease of approximately $12.3 million. So we brought in huge federal grants. We issued $10 million in debt service, so we had all that revenue in 2022. We are not bringing in that same revenue in 23, but we are continuing to finish the project. So more money out, less money in, and that really drives this overall decrease by, like I said, over $12 million just in the airport fund alone. And that'll happen when you're doing big capital projects. Here we've got the 2023 budget summary by fund, or I'm going to start a series of slides because who wants to do it just in one? We do fund-based accounting at Montrose County, and really this is fits well. It's an accounting system, broadly utilized by governments, but fits well with our dedication to transparency because it allows us to see how our individual funds are operating. We can see how the event center is looking versus airport versus human services, sheriff's office, etc. And while we do account by fund, it all feeds to the bottom line, and so you're seeing the entire thing today. So we have the ability to look at how those individual pieces of our operation are running, but every fund ultimately does go to the bottom line numbers that we discuss. Okay, so I know we don't want to do a ton of graphs, so I'll just read this one slowly to you line by line. No.
Torture.
This is as granular as we're going to get in the presentation. And it's not to overwhelm, but we do want this information out there for the board and for the public that are interested. This is, the overview of the entire organization, fund by fund, including revenues, expenditures, net change in fund balance, and projected balances. So this shows really pretty decent detail across the entire organization, which is why we wanted to include it. Notable changes are the general fund, has a reduction of $3.2 million due to significant transfers out and expenditures that will be made. Public safety sales tax has some change due to expenditures for, again, capital projects, and also above average labor increases for the sheriff's office. Capital improvements fund is got some movement due to transfers in and the capital expenditures out. And as I mentioned previously, the big mover here is the airport, and you can actually see that $12.3 million reduction in fund balance due to the ongoing expenditures of the terminal expansion. So you get all the way to the bottom line, bottom right, this is where we end up with that projected fund balance of 62 million across all funds, still higher than 2020 actual ending. See, that wasn't so bad. We'll run through a few highlights on both the revenue and expenditure side of the budget. I fully acknowledge that you're not supposed to have this much text on a PowerPoint, but we did really want it there for the public who may be interested, and to give enough detail that anybody reviewing later can understand, what we're talking about there. So that's why we're a little wordy, but it's really for reference after the presentation as well. So the first revenue highlight is, total revenue is down 19% year over year. And that's because in 2022, we had 10 million in debt proceeds for the airport, and 14.4 million in Federal Aviation Administration grants. In 2023, we don't have those things, and that's really the majority of the change on the revenue side. Operating revenue is much the same story in that we had $8.3 million in ARPA funding realized in 2022, and that is the American Rescue Plan Act for anybody that may be following along. We don't have those same revenues in 2023, so that's a significant reduction. We did have an increase in sales tax, and we'll talk sales tax in detail later, but that was generally offset by a decrease in property tax revenue. And ultimately, we've got a net decrease in operating revenue of 10.2%. There it is. That decrease in, the picture moves. That decrease in property tax is really due to a TABOR refund that we need to be issuing as we are over the TABOR cap. And so we'll be issuing a TABOR refund of 1.56 million. And then the state legislature adjusted the assessment rates, which lowers what we collect. And so ultimately that is why we have a decrease in property tax revenue for 2023. Sales tax continues to be really, really strong. We do have detail on that later. Year to date through July, we're up 12%. We did see the August numbers yesterday. They were way up. So continuing to be really strong, 22 over 21. We are not bold enough to project that double-digit increases continue forever, and so we are projecting a 4% sales tax increase for 2023. And then finally, this is ARPA funding in a different section. It's the Local and Tribal Consistency Fund, which I know has been a discussion among the commissioners and CCI lately. We are slated to receive 2.35 million in 2023 in revenue as a result of being a county that receives PILT funding. Ultimately, this is simplest way to look at it may be, it's additional PILT.
Yeah.
But it was originally authorized through the ARPA legislation. All right, on to the expenditures. Total expenditures exclusive of our interfund transfers are 112.2, which is a 13% increase. As you've likely guessed by now, that is due to our capital program. And then we do have a $3.9 million increase in operating revenues. I will get into some detail on that in a bit. We have a 6.8% increase in operating expenditures, and that's really driven by labor and non-personnel operating costs. 1.3, that's in the upper right here. So that 3.9 million increase in operating expenditures, here's the kind of mid-level breakdown. 1.3 million of that is labor. 2.6 is those non-personnel operating costs, and that's where, again, you find that additional private contracting in road and bridge, sort of driving that swing, combined with the debt service payment for the airport that we are now having to budget for annually. Personnel costs of $31.7 million total are a 4.4% increase year over year. We do have a net decrease, and I'll cover this in detail later, but of 5.35 FTEs across the organization as a whole. Key input in this regard was the 5% market increase that we budgeted for, and we did get fortunate this year in that we had only a 2.9% increase in benefits driven by the health insurance costs. Non-personnel expenditures of $30.1 million total are a 9.4% increase. We did increase our targets due to inflation for all of the departments. Most of them were well under, and so again, this 9.4% is driven by a couple of big items: airport, debt service, and some of the activity in road and bridge. And then finally, just to give a picture of the capital plan, quite literally pictures of the capital plan. Look, we've got actual construction, I think, from the airport there. $50.4 million in expenditures for 2023, $20 million in airport, big chunk there at Road and Bridge, and then the 14.7 for the courthouse and the 3.34 for the jail, as I mentioned. So an outsized capital plan for 2023. Getting into revenue by fund, the general fund revenue change is really attributed to not having those ARPA funds, as I mentioned. Capital improvement is increased due to the congressionally directed spending coming through and being accounted for in that fund, so that's the $7.7 million coming through USDA. And then again, that big decline in revenue is in the airport fund due to just not having the debt proceeds and less grant funding. So exclusive of transfers, we are right at a 19% reduction in revenue, which, under other circumstances would be cause for great concern, but for us is just anticipated given the projects that we've had going on. Some more detail on property tax. 2022 was a non-reassessment year. We had a slight increase in actual value due to new construction, the new things being built and added to the rolls. But we did have that decrease that I mentioned due to the assessment rate being lowered by the state legislature. And then we are going to be issuing a TABOR refund, which we do in the form of a lower tax bill for all of our taxpayers as opposed to the check in the mail type approach. Other than that, that's pretty straightforward for property tax. All right, for sales and use tax, the bar graph tells the story.
Yeah.
You can see it has been significant increase year over year for the past several years for road and bridge and public safety. That's good. It certainly helps our operations to be able to bring in those additional revenues. I think this is a product really of a strong economy, both locally and nationally. We've had an increasing population and certainly increased visitation, and everybody that's spending money here is paying these taxes. And then rising cost of goods. As a driver too, when you're paying more for something, the tax takes up a little bit in response to that or proportionally. So again, with our hyper-conservative approach, we would not project this to continue forever. And so we have taken the much more conservative approach of budgeting a 4% increase for 2023. We would much rather be wrong and have it come in at 8, 9, 10% than to budget at 10% and have it come in at 2. Those are easier changes to make one direction than the other. So We've taken that conservative approach. That said, we are up over 11% and rising year to date, 2022 compared to 2021. It's a way to look at expenditures by type and a little bit of more detailed breakdown on our personnel costs. You can see we do have 31 plus million, call it 31.7 million budgeted for personnel in 2023. This is a significant change. It is the result of budgeting a 5% market increase across the organization. We do have some proposed adjustments to pay structure, which would not have any further impact from what you see here in 2023, but help us keep our salary ranges in line moving forward as well. Non-personnel operating, that 9.4% increase I've covered a couple times already. It will be on the quiz. So I'll not
Open
go.
book, right?
What's that?
It's open book though, right, the quiz?
It's open book for you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Here's our major capital, which, for comparison's sake, I mean, we've got 31.7 million in total labor, 30 million on goods, services, and then 50.4 million on major capital. So another way to look at that, that outsized impact of major capital in 2023. All right, total expense by department. Not going to go through these line by line. The big movers here are really no surprise. We've got a huge increase in facilities due to the courthouse project. So if that 201% increase pops out at anybody, that's why. The sheriff's office has some higher than average labor increases. They had some more ground to make up than other departments in terms of where those staff were sitting from a salary structure standpoint. So they're going to be incurring relatively higher labor increases for 23 than the rest of the departments, and that drives their increase to some extent. Public Works, that outside services line and contracting there. And then IT is a big mover here, but they have some decision packages that are expensive relative to their budget. Update of several of the Konica Minolta machines. We're going to go ahead and rather than replace all of our desktop phones over 3 or 4 years, we're just going to get it done next year. We also have a Microsoft Office upgrade that is when you have as many devices as we do, adds up. That's a 6-figure item as well. So that's the big increase in IT, is that they're doing really good work and keeping us up to date. So the bottom line here is a 12.9% increase in expenditures, which we've covered a bit already. Next slide is going to be our departmental staffing. Our bottom line is a reduction of 5.35 FTEs, full-time employees across the organization. The adds that we've made this year are, I think, extremely straightforward. The airport's going to add a custodian when we're adding 20,000 plus square feet of new high traffic area out there. I think that makes a lot of sense. And so we're going to budget for an additional FTE for custodian out there. The county assessor has requested an additional appraiser, and this one comes with a bit of an asterisk in that he wants to make this a fourth quarter hire. And so we're going to show the FTE, but we've actually only budgeting a quarter of the expense here because the assessor is not planning to have this person hired until late in 23. The purpose being that he needs them trained and up to speed for 2024 to serve the needs of his office. Clerk and recorder had it was a 0.1. So look here, not here, look here. We swore we got every little detail, but yeah, so it was a 0.1 reduction. I think there's only so many times human beings can look at a presentation before it just all
Does that come down to about 15 minutes a week or something, .01?
Yeah, it's not a .01, it's a .1, so that'd be
Okay.
4 hours a week.
Okay.
But she had a remnant in her budget and has chosen to eliminate that. Yeah. The coroner dropped a .4 vacant deputy coroner spot. That's that reduction. The event center had a very part-time custodian position, which they have elected to eliminate. Facilities is going to gain a net .5, and this increase is they had a vacant half-time admin assist, which they are going to allocate towards a maintenance tech, and so we're going to add a .5 to make that a full-time position. So dropping an admin, part-time admin assist, and adding a full-time maintenance tech, which again, we're adding tons of square footage. We are fighting our battles on South Townsend with that building, and the team could certainly use that additional labor. So
is that gonna cover the airport expansion? Will we have enough people to get all that facilities work maintained and?
that's part of why we wanted to make this ad, and so the team feels that they do.
Okay,
I certainly support making this shift, and dropping additionally the vacant
absolutely.
part-time admin assist as well.
I just wanna make sure we cover all the bases, that we have a nice airport, that we have people in there that are maintaining and keeping it clean and in order.
Yep,
So if we need to revisit it, I would support that.
and we certainly can. I have not got the ask. This was kind of a joint suggestion
Okay.
from myself to the facilities team to make this ad and utilize that vacant
Yep.
part-time position elsewhere.
Okay, thank you.
But yeah, we don't want to find ourselves behind the 8 ball on maintenance.
No.
By any means, so. Human services, so there is an existing health and human services employee that is currently .3 budgeted in public health. They're going to be recoded to human services, so that's a .3 add for human services. Conversely, it is a .3 reduction on the public health side. Public health is also eliminating a vacant communicable disease EPR specialist. This is a position the state now staffs regionally, and we have access to that person. Therefore, we are going to cease our recruitment and just eliminate this vacant FTE from the budget. And then the big mover here is Public Works. We had 6 vacant equipment operator positions, as well as a vacant fleet mechanic position. Those are going to be eliminated in the 2023 budget. Crew sizes have been set by the Public Works Director, and we are now going to be adhering to those crew sizes until we hear otherwise. It's hard to reduce, well, it's a lot easier to reduce vacant positions. And that's really what we've done here. More work, as I said, is being privately contracted for 2023. And then there are some significant wage increases across the organization, but in Public Works, Road and Bridge as well. Not to be doom and gloom, but we do anticipate an economic downturn at some point, just due to the cyclical nature of the economy, and this can't be the case forever. And to be purely blunt about it, we would much rather eliminate vacant positions than actual employees, and so we're taking the opportunity to do that now. So we're going to have fewer employees, more private contracting, and the employees we do have are getting a pretty significant bump in wages. And then finally, the sheriff's office, adding a 1.0 full-time deputy to be dedicated to the airport. This is a request that both the airport and the sheriff very much support. We're putting 400,000 people through that airport on an annual basis, and we need the extra help and presence there. This position will just be a deputy at the SO, but is paid out of the airport operations fund, so it does not impact PSST's bottom line. So all that to say, we end up actually with a reduction of over 5 FTEs total across the organization for 2023. So our staffing levels have held very steady for many years now.
I agree.
You know, to kind of wrap it up, yeah, we have a thriving airport that it's growing to meet accelerating demand. We have a jail in need of renovation for efficiency and safety. And we have a historic courthouse that has sat half abandoned for decades at this point, while the other half houses employees who are just kind of making do in there. All these things need addressed, and that is driving this significant capital plan. Fortunately, we plan and we budget extremely well. Due to our fund modeling, our long-range planning, our grant writing and ability to bring in external funding, and our overall fiscally conservative approach, we are very well positioned to carry out these projects. Yeah. It's been a multi-year process to get to this point, and we are fully prepped to make these things a reality. Those same principles that make us successful in our capital projects allow us to weather challenging times in the labor market and the economy as a whole. We continue to attract and retain great employees. And this budget reaffirms that commitment to talent as a priority while maintaining our ability to incur these costs now and into the future. So that's what I really wanted to close with, as our budget summary. It continues to be my honor to serve the staff, citizens, and elected officials of the county. And I'm very glad to be able to deliver this budget to the board, staff, and citizens. So that's it. We made another one. Happy to take questions. We've got our next steps here, which I will not read to you, but you're all familiar with how that works. What do you think?
I think that a lot of hours go into the preparation for a 30-minute presentation, so it seems like we should sit here for as long as it's taken.
No.
We don't go through the book today?
Not today.
I even got it up. I didn't even want to look at it.
No,
Put it back
I
here.
would also just mention that there's a supplemental packet for all of you that has all of the
Yeah.
detail that goes into these slides.
Mhm.
Which is
Right.
nice, you can cross-reference and stuff. And if you got questions from the community, and I know we'll have some questions from certain people, so you need to be
There's
ready.
a lot in there.
Yeah. So as you look at the macro level, is besides the looking out at the 5-year, the PSST fund, we're on track to continue to build those funds in the future. So there's nothing that of concern that pops up with the exception of that, and I'm not drawing any attention to that except to say that would be just something to keep an eye on in terms of expenditures as we go forward. Right.
That is correct. All the funds maintain targeted fund balance through the 5-year planning horizon, but for PSST, but that's in out years at this point, and so we can monitor and adjust so that we don't end up on the rocks.
Correct.
So in the event that the courthouse comes in at a much larger estimate, are we prepared to pivot and have some backup plan for that? Just.
It's a board decision, what your tolerance for spending is. We can tell you what it does to the fund models. We can certainly pivot and come up with alternative plans.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
But ultimately, that's going to be a bid and an award that is to the Board of County Commissioners.
Mm-hmm. I didn't mean to interrupt you, Keith.
That's fine. You do it all the
I
time.
know. Well, I have a.
I was gonna, thanks for all the hard work, guys. It's mine now. No, thanks for all the hard work.
Yeah.
We know what it takes to put one of these together, and we do appreciate it.
It also, it shows how much trust we have in our finance department and our county manager, because you guys do all the heavy lifting, obviously, and meet with the departments. I'm really proud that the departments were conservative in how they, with their decision packages. Nobody comes in, and that's been that way for the last 4 years. Nobody's come in with outrageous requests, so they seem to understand what our value is in terms of keeping it conservative budgets.
Well, and not growing government, because we see that at the state and federal level. And then you look at our numbers, and they've been pretty consistent since when Keith and I got here. It stayed right around that 360, 380 mark in there. And that's a tributation, or a tribute to us not.
Aviation.
Yeah, attributes to us not looking to grow big government and create lots of bureaucracy.
Well, and I think
and
that
like
just speaking to the privatization of, outsourcing some of the work that we can, some of the arrangements that we've made in the public health department have really sort of underscored that, so,
Yeah.
yeah.
And with our contract in the road and bridge, I think that's a big thing. That way it keeps us more nimble on the other end. If we have a down year in our revenues, we don't have a big crew out there. We're trying to figure out what we're gonna do with. We can just not let those contracts.
Yep.
Yeah, and I agree with you, John. I think we're gonna have a pretty stark adjustment in the market as we move forward, and I'm not sure if that inflation number is gonna grow, but, we wanna keep an eye on all of that, so.
A little more.
Yeah. Thank you guys for a great job, well done.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Anything
you.
else
We
for
do
us?
appreciate it, everybody.
Cindy, Lanny, anything you wanna add? We're all good?
Okay.
Really, Lanny,
Hey.
you don't have a joke for us or anything?
Yeah.
Yeah, I missed the
There's
jokes.
no humor in there.
The Delbert?
The Delbert, I missed
Delbert,
Delbert.
They,
Okay, thank you.
I heard they kicked Delbert out of some of the newspapers, so
Oh,
I'll have to
really?
find the
Didn't know
source.
that.
Yeah, they did. The woke are busy.
Okay, nothing for planning and development, correct?
Are you sure, Talmadge?
Thought I'd ask. No executive session, and I'd entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
It's been moved and seconded. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
All those